Child and Woman and the creative reflections that follow in this episode and subsequent episodes are artistic expressions, not clinical interpretations. Nothing in this series is meant to diagnose, treat, or offer therapeutic instruction. If anything in these conversations touches a tender part of your story, please consider connecting with a qualified mental health professional, a trusted support person, or a trauma-informed practitioner. Your well-being matters, and you don't have to navigate any of this alone. This episode may include personal reflections on trauma, including experiences of sexual harm, family dysfunction, and emotional abandonment. There are no graphic details, but the themes may still feel activating or tender. Please listen in a way that feels safe for your body and your story. You can pause, step away, or return later. Your well-being comes first. Welcome to the Lori Clarke Show. I'm your host, Lori Clarke, and this is episode 100, part 6 of the Shame Out Loud series. What happens when you realize you've been living as an adult in some parts of life, but holding a child's fear in others? This final conversation in the Shame Out Loud series stays with that question, not as a theory, but as a lived experience that's held in the body. Alongside this series, I have created curious writing companions and that are journals, but you know now that I like to call them curious because I like to keep my writing curious, that help you and me write through whatever surfaces as you listen. And you also know that I am now going to read the last little portion of a summary of the Child and Woman reading so that you can have this fresh in your memory. Child and Woman begins before plot and explanation. It begins with a divide. There is a girl and there is a moment that splits her world in two. One part of her stands in the light trying to understand what happened, and another part steps toward the dark because the truth feels unbearable. Between them is a trembling threshold, like a witness forming in real time. The piece places this personal moment inside of something bigger. Generations of women and men have carried secrecy with stories that weren't believed. It names how violation can arrive swiftly and without warning, crossing a sacred boundary. It also names that this harm isn't limited by gender or age. Women and men, young and grown, you, me, us, we, all with a story. Then the writing narrows into the bathroom scene. The girl is crying. Trying to catch her breath, she pinches her own skin and feels nothing. Her body has gone numb. She strains to hear her heartbeat, but all she can hear is ringing, an endless hum that drowns out everything else. Every muscle tightens, as if gripping the memory could keep it from destroying her. Dissociation arrives as distance and quiet slipping away. In the mirror, there are two versions of her at once. The girl at the sink and the girl in the glass. Water rushes from the faucet loud and urgent like it might carry feelings away. She reaches toward the reflection. She cannot touch her. That's the first moment she understands that there is now something thick between her and the beauty of who she was. The girl in the mirror speaks, soft as a vow. I'm okay. I'm okay. Her body betrays the lie. She shakes, shivers, tremors rolling through a frame that cannot hold what just happened. The witness, the self that stays, knows the truth. The body isn't releasing, it's absorbing. Release will come later. Much later. Then the mirror changes again. The reflection turns her head, and behind her a path appears. Not smooth, not welcoming, the road of stones leading into dense forest. The girl at the sink panics, pleading across the glass for her not to go. The reflection answers with clarity that sounds like relief. I'd rather go into this darkness than stay in the light of what I had just experienced. And just like that, the rules settle into place. One becomes a witness, the other disappears into the forest. Decades pass inside the logic of this piece, even as the scene stays close. The witness has waited for the girl. When movement finally comes, it's subtle at first, rustling branches, a flicker of color against the blackness of a thick forest. The girl emerges, disheveled and thirsty, stumbling out of the dark with her eyes still closed. She has learned to rely on hearing and inner sight after walking for years without light. As she steps forward, she notices the ground has changed. It feels soft and spongy, not rocky. Her feet feel held. She speaks out loud, almost surprised. This will take some getting used to. Light grows, her eyes adjust. She sees what looked like a pool of water and kneels to drink, hands cupped. And then she freezes. In the water, she sees a woman. The woman is older, disheveled, with long hair and fine lines around her eyes, deeper ones across her forehead. Her eyes are warm and inviting, and the girl recoils. Gasping, she leans in again, trying to make sense of what she's seeing. The water ripples, the face shimmers. She tests the reflection the way a child might test reality. A tongue stuck out, a blink, a touch to the forehead. The woman mirrors her exactly. And then comes a detail that makes denial harder. The scar. The same scar. The one the girl got when a neighborhood boy hurled a rock so hard it embedded beneath her skin. Something long, dormant flickers inside her, described as an ember releasing colors. Red, blue, yellow, green, black, white, brown. Awareness rises like flame. They are the same. Child and woman. The exchange between them lands like a soft blow. The girl whispers, "Is this me? I only was in the bathroom minutes ago." The woman replies, "My love, it was decades." The girl's instincts surge. She turns back toward the rocky path and the familiar edge of the forest, pulled toward what she knows, even if it was born from harm. But the older voice, her own voice, calls urgently, "No, no, wait, please, don't go back into the night." And that's where this piece leaves us, in the tension between returning to darkness for protection and staying long enough to be found. Welcome to the round table. I would love to introduce you to our roundtable guest today, Petra Broombar, a mind-body professional, founder of the Journey Wellbeing Platform, host of the globally ranked Journey podcast, and author of The Functional Freeze Formula. With a master's in psychology and as a doctoral student in mind-body medicine, she is dedicated to advancing holistic and integrative approaches to well-being. Petra supports professionals in understanding and recovering from functional freeze so they can engage with their full human potential. Through her programs, writing events, and global community initiatives, individuals and organizations can explore integrative healing in ways that are accessible, transformative, and sustainable. And I would like to welcome Petra to the table. And Annie returns again to join us as a roundtable contributor. And last but not least, my co-host, Tammy Valicenti. We are so glad you are here for episode 100, part 6 of the Shame Out Loud series. Let's get into it. Well, thank you so much, Petra, for joining us in this conversation. I know you are excited to be here, and we are very excited to have you coming on to the panel to share with us about the reading Child and Woman. So why don't you go ahead first and just give us a little insight into who you are, and then we can jump in.
Sure. Thank you, Lori. And thanks again for inviting me and Tammy as well and Annie, whom I just met. So thank you for this wonderful coming together. I feel like we don't, as women especially, talk enough about these things that are happening to us. So thank you
Mm,
for opening this space for us to be here.
yeah.
And I'm a mind body coach, and so I work a lot with this connection between the mind and the body, which I feel so very often gets lost when trauma happens to us and things happen to us that are challenging. So it is part of the work that I enjoy, let's say, a lot is rebuilding that connection that gets lost. And I've created The Journey, which is an online well-being platform. So we work with any kind of holistic approaches to mental health, to emotional well-being, and to physical well-being as are all connected together. So that is where I spend the majority of my time. I work a lot with chronic stress, which sometimes is a result of things that happen to us in our lives, and sometimes it happens just along the way with work and relationships. But stress seems to be a huge part of our world today. So that is also something really close to my heart. I host a podcast all about holistic healing and mental health. So along that same road, and I wrote a book last year about chronic stress and functional freeze because I feel this is such an important topic. So we'll see where things go from here. I'm continuing to study this and academically getting a little bit more involved, and I really hope that especially for women's health, we can continue to explore chronic stress, chronic pain, anxiety, all of these things that come together, because I feel like not much research is available on that either. So that's a little bit about myself and what I do on a day-to-day basis. So
Thank
very
you very
nice to
much.
meet everyone.
That's great. Well, I'm interested in I've got a few things written down here, so I can't wait to go over this with you. Before we do that, what you watched the video Child and Woman, and how did that connect to you or impact you?
I have to be really honest, Lori. It actually took me a few times to watch it. So I
That
started watching it and I felt so much coming up in myself, and especially, I don't know what it was, but when you describe trying to touch
mm,
to the mirror, trying to touch to the water surface, it did something with me. I'm not
mhm.
really sure what that was. It did something. And I actually paused and then I went back the next day and I
Oh,
kept playing it. And I really sat with the emotions that came up. And in the beginning, the first thing that came up for me was such a homecoming, a recognition of what you were writing, where I thought, wow, I thought I was one of the only people experiencing this in that way in my body and my mind. And yeah, sometimes thinking, who is this person in the mirror? And then watching your video and going, wow, I think this is an experience that other people have too, other women have too. So it took me a few days to watch it, and I sat with it overnight. I thought about it. I just let that really sink in, and I feel that it's describing, again, something that we don't talk about enough, that we don't get the space to talk about. And often we're told, even by others who've experienced this, to, well, you need to just suck it up and get on, or are you just going to spend your entire life thinking about this, or are you going to get it together? Are you just move forward with this? And that was one of the hardest parts, is to not have a space to express that. And that's why I think that touched me so much on so many different levels watching your video. Finally, somebody is speaking about that. Finally, somebody's allowing the space to be expressive about this, to actually talk about what happened and how you felt, how this sat in your body. And that surprise after decades going, wow, there's a woman there now that has grown up through all of this, with all of this in my body and my mind and my cells. Who is this person now? Who should
yeah.
I be? Who am I? What do I even want out of life? Can I heal through this? Did I heal through this?
Right.
I just found this so profound. So thank you for sharing that. And yeah, it took me a few days to watch it, but I was so impacted by that. And another reason why I felt so privileged to join all these lovely women today. So thank you for that.
Oh, well, that is so meaningful to me. I It is incredibly meaningful. I think for me, as I reflect on that piece, the impact for me was the same, like reaching to the water and the grief that I felt in realizing that I was a woman in the water, but I was a child in the forest. Where did I go? Because I felt like other aspects of my life, I was present and I knew I was an adult. But in this moment, in this situation, this is why we're here. We get to come back home to ourselves. And Petra, that was so beautifully said. I just so appreciate it. So thank you very much.
Can I ask you, Lori? It's not clear from your writing. Do you know what allowed that part of you to make contact at that point? Like, what were the circumstances? What
Hmm.
I think for our listeners, and for me too, for anyone listening, I think it's so important to I don't know the recipe's different for everyone, but to know that the possibility, like maybe if these things are in place, that would allow for some
Hmm.
contact or some healing.
Well, that is an interesting question. And I happily will respond. I was, I had a very, very toxic family of origin. I had a parent who was narcissist, abusive, um, um, verbally, and and was a consistent gaslighter. And I, as a young child, tried to figure it out, and I never could. And I tried to earn approval through whatever I could. And then this sexual assault happened at the age of 6. And so I didn't know how to handle that because I'd already been on this really shaky ground with this person in my life who I was supposed to listen to. I was supposed to, all these things. I was also raised in the church. And so that also brought another level of um, of confusion to me because I didn't know where to put my pain, and I could give it to God, which I tried, but there was no answer. It wasn't. I thought I was going to get an answer, and so I was giving what I could with this person in my life who was my parent and who was just destructive. And then this experience happened, multiple abusers, and I just didn't know where to go. And I shared, and I shared with my parents, and it was met with, "That's okay. We have you," which meant zero. Fast forward to 5 years ago, my parent, my father, my birth father, um, just decided one day to tell me that he didn't love me. It was over. That he didn't like me. He didn't love me. He didn't love my kids. And so I was so deeply grieved and impacted, and I felt like I didn't know who I was. I said, how is this possible that I could be living this life? Like, I have an incredible partner. Dave and I have been married for 30 years this year. We have 4 children together, and we have a really good, beautiful life full of gratitude and simplicity. And on the other side, how could this be happening to me? And upon this massive betrayal and abandonment and pain, it cracked open all of this toxic mess inside of me, and I started getting sick. It started coming out of my body. I couldn't get away from pneumonia. I couldn't get away from, I would lose my voice. I literally was reduced to this tiny little whisper, and I could barely speak. And I found my nervous system on high alert and in this survival mode. And I just was gripped with such confusion as a 45-year-old woman. I'm like, who am I? And so I saw this quote that said, who were you before the world told you who you should be? And it was like that was my moment. I broke out of jail and I said, I am finding her because I'm not living here anymore.
Yes.
And one night for 10, this writing was the first writing of 10 nights where I would wake up at midnight and I'd go back to bed at 5 a.m. I would get a couple hours sleep. I'd take the kids to school and I'd write again. I wrote for 10 days straight.
Wow.
I would ask my body, what do you want to say? And this would spill out. And interestingly enough, I had to deal with this belief that I was stupid. Because in my life, this man reinforced to me that I was not going to be anybody special. And so I had to wrestle with, well, okay, I have all these beautiful writings, but who is going to want to hear them? Who would want to read them? And why would it be me? Because I was grown up in this environment. Now, Dave never felt that about me. My children never felt that about me, but it was just this thing. And so when I read back, I wrote Child and Woman and I never looked at it for a year.
Wow.
I wrote it. I did not look. When I looked at it, I said, oh my goodness. And I think it would have been in when did we meet, Tammy? I can't remember.
The beginning of the year? Or was it the fall? It was the beginning
I think it was the beginning of the year. And I was processing this. I'd been in somatic therapy for a year, processed this, and I met Tammy, and I had been working on Child and Woman, and I knew I was supposed to launch this, and I didn't know how. And she said to me after our conversation, after our podcast, she said, hey, like if there's anything you ever want to talk about or collaborate. And I was like, I got something for you. I have it. Here, take it. And that's actually how this started. Tammy wrote me back and said, that was the most incredible verbal writing of a display of connection to dissociation that she had seen. And like, thank you for articulating that. And then this came forward. So that's that. Any questions?
So many. So many. It was really through the incredible pain and breakdown that there was a breakthrough, and
that's right,
an opportunity, an invitation, all those things. It sounds like,
yes. Yeah, and that was the piece for me. Is I understood that the body is our voice. The body has a message, and in it is the memory. And I had spent my life. Now, I don't know any of you feel this way, but I didn't always know my body wanted to say stuff. I didn't have this connection that, my heart has a voice. Oh, my lungs are full of grief and I can barely breathe because I don't know where to put the grief. Like I didn't understand. And so it was in and through these writings where I looked at it and went, oh, who is that? Is that me? Like, how? It's incredible.
Thank you for sharing. I'm so curious, Petra, about your reactions to what Lori just said and shared about the body, the voices, and those connections.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. And as you're talking, I'm kind of nodding along because I felt in my journey that, Tammy, when you were asking what made it possible to actually come to this breakthrough, the pieces that made that possible were a lot of those pieces where all of a sudden my body, it didn't just say hello, it really literally whacked me over the head with something like an illness or something grave that took months to resolve.
Yeah.
And there I started reestablishing that connection that had been gone. And so I find it really interesting that you mentioned that those were also pieces of your journey, that they were, in a sense, actually quite physical at some point where your body was really, it was not just quietly whispering anymore, but saying to you very loudly, something needs to happen now. You're this person that needs to process this now. There's something in me that needs to come out. So I find this absolutely fascinating. And it is something that I feel happens a lot is when we have grief or we have a trauma, things that really affect us, they get stuck in the body. And
Yeah.
so when you touch on somatic therapy that you're doing, I'm wondering, has it been helpful for you? Have you felt that you were able to process some of those pieces? Because I did feel like a combination of both talk therapy, which was very sort of head centered, and
Yep.
also somatic therapy, which was very body centered, actually led to a lot of those breakthroughs that allowed for a lot of that healing to take place. I don't know how you ladies feel about that, but it's one of the things that I noticed.
I did not do talk therapy. I work with a somatic therapist, and we work specifically in terms of internal family systems. So she specializes in shame
Mhm.
and the internal family systems, and then through connecting to your inner child, then you begin to ask where it is in the body, and then we go to the table, and she brings in a grounding force, and then we connect to that part in my body, and then it sometimes has some things it has to say, and sometimes it um, just needs someone who's incredibly grounded to anchor the space. It's already said what it's needed to say. And then it just like, it evaporates. Yeah.
I know what you speak of viscerally in the work that I've done personally. When we get in, when I get into contact with those parts that have been exiled off, dissociated off for so long, it can be really intense. And there's that melting and that
Mm,
relief.
yeah.
There's no sweeter experience for me
No.
than getting in touch with those parts that have been cut off for so long.
Mm, hmm. Annie, anything for you that comes up?
Yeah, I just was gonna mention something that has come up for me a lot lately is actually movement of my body and the
Mm,
connection of that to kind of my lived experience in the sense of I always danced growing up, but I never felt like I was like dancing from my soul. Um, and
oh,
I feel like now if I'm dancing in the kitchen or at home, right? Like I'm actually like moving in a way that feels good to my body rather than like what I think someone's thinking about when they're watching me move my body.
mm,
Um, so I think that is what I'm kind of feeling as you share that and how that's kind of worked through me in my forest.
Wow.
Petra, how did it land for you? Like, what somatic work for you?
Yeah, it was sort of that missing piece, I feel.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
I spent
Yeah.
a long time in therapy, and I don't know, Tammy, if we I've touched on that when we were recording the podcast, but I spent probably about a decade in talk therapy, so I was a very good client. But it didn't actually move me forward to anything. It wasn't until I added that somatic piece to it, my mind slowly became ready to receive that healing. I feel like there was a bit of a disconnect where it just wasn't able to receive that on a physical level yet. And so it didn't travel up to the mind. And so we talked a lot about everything that happened. Also, I felt sometimes too much, almost re-traumatizing by talking about the same thing over and over. And the missing link was that body piece, that somatic piece. I felt like something was locked in there that just couldn't be reached with a logical conversation or by talking about it. It was so deeply in there. It was almost just an innate response to the pain where my body was like, nope, we're not going there by talking about it. We're going to lock this up and you're just going to deal with it some other way.
Yeah.
And it stayed in there until that somatic piece came along and I started realizing it had to do a lot with the nervous system. It had to do a lot with the actual physical systems in my body. I had no idea that the body would store this kind of trauma or how it would store that or how we could get it back out of there. But that is definitely something I became aware of through this healing process. And it was grief, actually, that opened that door to that breakthrough, a very tough year in 2018 where I lost 5 family members and my best friend all in the same year. And
Oh my goodness.
at the end of that year, I didn't feel anything. And that scared me so much because everybody was saying, oh, you must just be so heartbroken. You need to take time off work to grieve. And I was like, no, I'm totally fine. Like, I'm good. I'm not feeling anything. And that actually made me sit back and say, "Hmm, there's something so wrong with this. I don't even know where to start, but I need to figure out what's going on." And that eventually let me come to that piece where the somatic and the body was involved. But same as for yourself, there was a lot of grieving kind of opened that door to that.
Yeah. And the
What was
grieving.
Okay.
Oh, sorry. No, Tammy, go ahead, please.
Well, I was just wondering about that when once you got to the somatic work, what was different? What did you find out or what felt different? What was without getting into details?
Sure.
Yeah. The most basic thing that I always felt, and I don't know if you can relate to this, but I felt like I could never really take a breath. And it's been like that ever since I was younger. I don't know what it is, but I always felt like I just can't really breathe in deeply or even exhale deeply. It was such a weird, a weird thing. And that was one of the first things that started happening when I started working with the vagus nerve and the nervous system. One day, I was sitting in front of the TV. I was doing really mindless stuff, but wow, I don't think I've ever breathed like this before. And it was just the weirdest realization that I don't think it means much to other people, but to me, it was like something shifting. I was never able to breathe like this before. And it wasn't a really huge thing. I didn't sit there and all of a sudden had all the answers or felt so much better. But it was these little tiny things that started happening. First, I was breathing a little bit deeper. Then I could actually sit with myself for a few minutes because that was really difficult. Like I never figured out how to meditate. I always thought there was something wrong with me because I couldn't meditate. And it was all these pieces that came together from this somatic and this nervous system work that felt like these little drips, but eventually that made a huge river that changed so many things. So these micro moments. This
Yeah.
is how it started.
Yeah. Micro moments, I would say as well. I can relate to the breath. I could not breathe. And it didn't matter. I would always say to Dave, I feel like I've just run a marathon.
Mhm.
And I never, because I had so many other layers. Yes, sexual assault was my experience, but I was also in a situation where I'd been raised in a very abusive manner. And I didn't, and all of those pieces that came with all of that.
Mhm.
And I was also forced to be in relationship with my abuser for my life. And so it was this pain and the secrecy of everybody knew, but I couldn't talk. I just there was no space for breath of life to be in my body.
Oh.
And I also had, constipation where I just could not have a clear bowel movement for my lifetime.
That makes
And
sense. Mhm.
Tammy, it was interesting because it didn't make sense to me. I was thinking the major difference, when I started going to somatic therapy, connecting in to my body and allowing my body to tell its story, but not only the body as a whole telling its story, but I went to every part and asked it what had meaning,
Mhm.
what happened to you? And then my bowels started sharing. And then my lungs started to share. And that really began this healing for me. The somatic was the open door of where I could see my lungs, and I would put a picture of my lungs in front of me and talk to the picture. Because it was harder to imagine. So I wanted the full view. And I did that with all the parts and let them have their time.
Oh.
Go ahead,
I
Annie.
I resonate so much. I think especially with the somatic piece and both being able to do it and to receive it is also interesting, right? And seeing how it affects somebody. I think for me it was a very quick weight off my chest. It was all sitting right at the top. And
Yeah.
so then once I did a little bit of movement through it, it was like I could never go back again to what I was before, right? I didn't go back there because it had really released. And I'll never forget, it was even on retreat, and someone had said to me, you actually look different after doing that work. The way that my posture was, the way that the people were receiving me was completely different from when I had walked in the door versus when I had walked out of
Right.
doing that somatic work.
Mm.
I
And
don't
then
think.
witnessing it is also incredible too.
Mm.
So,
Mhm.
right, Tammy?
Oh, absolutely. And I don't think we can emphasize enough how important the somatic, body work is. That I was thinking as you were both speaking that there's a real overlap between that and parent-child attunement. And in your description, Lori, of your process, and it's through that attunement with a caregiver that we are seen, that we are cared for, our needs are met, our emotional needs, our physical needs, our safety needs, and not only not only that, but the attunement kind of leads to co-regulation as well. And so we're really using yourself as that attuned, co-regulating parent to really synergize what's been separated from young age.
And would this be, Tammy, why I always told myself would just do this on my own? I would just say, no one is going to help me do this. I've never, I don't need I don't need you. I can do this on my own. I've got this. I'll carry the world on my shoulders and I will solve the problem for myself if it takes 10 years. But I feel like on some levels, it's because I had no other person to trust except me. And she and me bumbled around in the darkness trying to make sense of our life. And we did a pretty good job.
Yeah, that really resonates with me too. I think that's a very typical, normal trauma reaction, which is, I don't need anyone. I'm going to do it all myself. I'm not going to be vulnerable. I can't trust anyone else. I'm not sure I can trust myself even, as we talked about in that last episode. And and all of that bumbling, fumbling until you do finally, in all of that search, stumble across something that starts to feel a little different, like you so beautifully explained earlier.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
One more thing to add, and then I'll throw this out to anybody else. But my Petra, the first vision I had from after I wrote Child and Woman, I wrote also Fool, which is also something that I produce, and I'd love to have deeper dialogue about that too. It'd be fun. But with Child and Woman especially, I had this vision. It was almost like a picture that my body sent me. And it was this little cardboard sword. And it had all this glitter and child drawings on it. And it had my scratch and sniff stickers on it. And it was bent. Like it wasn't even usable. And I just had this image and I kept thinking, why do I keep having this image? I'd sit in stillness and I'd have this image of this little sword that was all bent. And then Melina and I began to ask her, like, what is this? And she said, well, let's go. Let's figure this out. And it was just my 6-year-old self, my little girl holding this sword because she believed she had to fight everything and everyone with her little scratch and sniff stickers and glitter. And I cry for her, and I free her. And I said to her, you've done such a good job with this little sword, baby girl. And I never was able to love her or know her. But part of the finding myself was that I scooped her with this body, with these wrinkles, with this age, and my mothering under my belt. I grabbed that baby and I tucked her in and I said to her, I love you. And I didn't make vows like, you'll never hurt again. I didn't do that. I was just like, I'm with you. And I'm sorry that I did not find you sooner. That's the power of somatic.
Beautiful.
I'm speechless. It was beautiful. Yeah. When you were talking about the girl with the sword, I just wanted to say, I felt it with my whole body. I love her.
I love her too.
I know.
But I didn't love her.
Yeah.
And I think that that's where it all begins. It's like that's where the separation happens. It's when whatever age that separation happened from yourself is the age that you're frozen and you sit there and you do your work because it's all you know. True. And now we are here and we are able to go back and retrieve. And that's the difference with the therapy that I've used as the somatic in connection with my internal family system is to go back and get that baby, to get that child, to get that 48-year-old woman, to get that 45-year-old woman and say, you're mine. I got you. Here's what I know now that I never knew then. And here's why I wasn't able to protect you, but I am here. Yes. You and me, we're together. And there's no more fragmenting. Can I repair you? And that is the work.
Yes, yes. And I have found in my own journey at times it's I mean, it sounds strange to say, and it's difficult. Yes, of course it's difficult. But
Right.
more specifically, there was a part, of course we have so many parts in us, but there was a part of me, she was around 9. I hated her. I hated her with everything I had. She'd be down on the ground in the kitchen and I would kick her. I didn't want to have anything to do with her. And that took a lot to work through.
Wow.
The hate part, the part that I hated. And it was hard for me to find compassion for a part that I thought had let me down.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah.
And how did you, Tammy, find where did you shift that narrative of you didn't do anything. I hate you. You didn't help or all those pieces.
Mm-hmm.
Where did that narrative shift for you into more of a compassion?
I think, I mean, it was after certainly many years of therapy, but it was ultimately beyond the talk therapy, more into the family systems. It was, interesting. The more somatic and EMDR stuff didn't really get at that either. It was
I
more
know.
of that parts work and tuning into the rage part that really wanted to abuse this 9-year-old, which was, as you can imagine, profoundly uncomfortable. But it was
Yeah.
really shining light in that dark place of the parts of me that could rage and that could hurt her, and getting close to that ultimately allowed me some love and compassion.
I also found that journaling and letting that part.
Mm-hmm.
So Melina would say to me, when you go home, let that part, if that part wants to speak, let it in your journal, because I would always find these incredible narratives and cycling beliefs inside of those words.
Right.
I'm a fool, I'm a failure, I'll never, like all these limited, beliefs. And then I would be able to say, well, that's the cycle. Like that's the narrative that's going on in my head. When I realized that's the child having her voice, and it's cycling through anxiety, through all the different things. It's incredibly powerful.
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to also, for me, something that comes up a lot in hearing what you guys are sharing is protection, like this idea of even when I feel that I wasn't doing the thing that was best for myself, it seems like it was stemming from a place of trying to protect myself, and then even trying to protect myself from like the quote that that you talk about, the things we keep from ourselves, right? Like that's preservation, that's protection. And I think once I could actually give myself some grace for the fact that that was like, I could only do better once I knew better. And that was how I was protecting myself. It was very freeing for me. Um,
Beautiful. Beautiful. Petra, do you have anything to add?
I'm just listening to all of you expressing that. It's just touching something inside of me. So I'm sitting with that. And I feel like as a more adult person, I mean, I started looking at all this in my mid-20s and then my 30s and then in my 40s. So it has been a long journey, but I never really realized, as Annie just said, how much these littler and younger parts of me were trying to protect me from what they thought was a re-injury, every time that came up, and a re-traumatization. And I thought it was just a kind of a lack of knowledge or a lack of intuition, but it just turned out that these pieces were doing the best that they could with the knowledge of a 9-year-old, a 10-year-old, a 13-year-old, a 15-year-old. And we think differently at those ages. We have different tools available to us. We have different experiences that haven't fully formed maybe as they are in adult life. So really coming to that place of even forgiving myself for being so hard on that, and so hard on those younger parts of me that did their best and just trying to keep me going, trying to keep me functional, trying to keep me living this life, because there are times when I didn't know how I would continue forward. There were times where I didn't know if I wanted to even continue moving forward.
Right.
And to forgive those younger parts and say, hey, I'm actually still here because you did what you did. And maybe now that no longer serves me in a way that it did before. But there was a place for that. And then there was a meaning for that. And that's why I'm still here. And there's that realization that actually everything went exactly how it should have gone. And to give, as Annie said, some grace for that and forgiveness. I feel like there's not just the forgiveness to other people that happened to come in along the way, but to myself.
Yeah.
That was sort of that biggest piece in moving forward and just integrating all of that. It's a lot. So
Yes.
yeah, it's a lot. But I'm so thankful that those younger parts of me were there and are still there and are part of me.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Me
Yeah.
too.
Beautiful. Such grace.
Yeah. I to speak to the preservation and the protection for a moment. When you said that, Annie, I realized I was having a conversation with my eldest daughter a few days ago, and we were talking about protection and preservation. You seem to, Annie, be just like somehow connected into the past conversations I've had in the last week, but I don't know how that's happening. It's so beautiful. But there's something about the shift for me of protection, believing that harm will come to me, because everything in my life showed me that harm was coming. Moving from protection to this preservation of who I am now and the beauty, preserving this the act of forgiveness that I had to go through, that I really did have to. It was like I couldn't get to here unless I did that part, and I would forgive my younger self, my parts, for expecting differently, and ask for that grace. And it turned into a preservation of, I can preserve goodness in me. I can preserve the love that I'm learning how to feel, because I am nowhere near loving myself completely. But it's in those really small micro moments where I can begin to offer the preservation of, I will love myself when I remember to. And preserve the beauty of who I am, because I would always try to give it away to be loved and to find connection to people. And I see nodding heads. So how has that shown up for everybody?
I think for me, it makes me think about even times when I would then paint the picture for myself, meaning I would subconsciously make a choice or pick a situation that maybe didn't feel aligned with like the healed part of myself in order to, I don't really like the word control, but to establish control, right? To feel like, um, self-sabotage essentially, right? And I think there's a lot of shame in that. Yeah, I think something I'm thinking a lot about is like, what is the opposite of shame? And I think in some reading that I've been doing, again, I know I mentioned the previous episode with Gregory Boyle, is like tenderness for ourselves and for others is kind of what he kind of labels as the opposite of shame.
Hmm.
And I just think that's really interesting. And you speaking, Lori, made me kind of think about all of those things. So thank you.
Well, thank you for that. I've never heard of Gregory Boyle before. I've never heard of his work, and you've referenced him twice, so now I've written it down. So you say that in his work, he says the opposite of shame is what?
Tenderness. and belonging.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Brene Brown talks about, shame dies in the light,
Yes.
right? When we speak it out to others through that connection, it dies. Mm-hmm. I also want to say something about not it's not always our parts. It doesn't always belong to us. And I think discerning that, knowing that, and discarding it when it's not ours, I think is really important. Sometimes an internal voice or a part might feel like our part, and it has nothing to do with us. It might be an internalized introject of someone who abused us, and it's theirs. It's not ours. It could be something that was passed down from previous generations. It's not ours.
Okay. This makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I had a podcast a while back with someone. Her name is Eileen Lashinsky. And she said to me, Lori, it's not your shame.
Mm-hmm.
The shame you're feeling, yes, you're feeling it, but that was put on to you. You didn't come out like that.
No.
So can we speak to the shame that you're referencing here? So it's not our shame. Is it then the person who harmed us, whether it's our abuser, whether it's, a bully, what in whatever way this comes up for anybody? What is it, Tammy?
Well, it can only be, we can only be given from our caregivers what they have to give. So if they don't feel good enough, our story or our shame piece is I'm not good enough. If they aren't lovable or don't feel worthy of love, then I then end up feeling unlovable or unworthy. It's not my story because I believe I was born into this world perfect and love, and there was nothing else inside of me. It was those stories passed down through my cells, through generations, that were layered on me. Again, not my shame. I feel like you have something to say about that, Annie.
Yeah, Annie.
I just wanted to snap the whole time you were speaking, Tammy, because I just agree wholeheartedly. And the way that it's kind of coming in like a picture for me is like, I think they say like, don't pour from an empty cup. But I think a lot of times people, when I think of shame, I think of almost like the cup being full of blood and us bleeding out on other people.
Cool.
And so if we go through life and the people around us, right, are bleeding out on us, well, we're going to then learn to like bleed on ourselves, kind of, right? Like with that analogy. And so we're not another thing that's really been huge for me in my brain is we're not attracted actually to what's good for us a lot of the time. We're attracted to what feels comfortable. And so if that voice in our head that does not belong to us feels comfortable, it's a lot harder to push that voice away and to reclaim the voice, right? So yeah, that was wonderful, Tammy.
Thank you for saying it in a different way. I was also snapping my fingers while you were speaking.
Me too. I was trying to figure out how to pour a cup of water on my head. I was like, well, how can we visualize this?
And how do you dry yourself off, wipe it off, and say, not mine?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It can be challenging when that's been entangled also in multiple generations, which I just got back from Germany and we did a lot of genealogy there looking for ancestors. It's kind of hard to do it online sometimes. So we actually physically went into the archives there and I was just totally flabbergasted at the stories that are coming out now, going up the family line and looking at those and going, I wonder if that's why I'm feeling sometimes the way that I'm feeling, or why I do things the way I do, or why I have these patterns that I can't really explain. These pieces, I think, can be challenging to find, but I do think they're there. And especially maybe if we go back even just 1 or 2 generations, women didn't have a lot of the rights we have now. They didn't have a lot of the freedoms we had now. they were very much into these squares of housewife, have as many children as you can, no birth control. You're just there to do one thing. And there was a lot of shame in that. There was a lot of pain there, I felt as well. And digging back through the generations and looking at some of these stories, and unfortunately, they're no longer alive to tell me about it. But the sense I got was that a lot of the patterns and the pain and those things that I have today that I'm dealing with actually came from a lot of those places.
I can see what you're describing also, Petra, in my own children. I think, sometimes I'm confounded by what I see them acting out or playing out in their lives. And I was like, oh, that was definitely me when I was younger and done all this work, done this healing. Or, oh, I can really see like whatever's coming out. I can see it exactly patterns from grandparents even. And I just, I mean, there's so much we don't know about epigenetics and other things. It's a wonder to me, given that they haven't seen any of this played out in the home growing up or anything. But there it is.
There it is.
Mm-hmm.
In Technicolor.
Yes. Yes. Uh-huh. No one's getting out of this unscathed.
No. and that might be the most frustrating part of this whole thing. And for me, I resonate. My kids are older, and it's the same kinds of things where you're looking and saying, wow, that's really interesting. Like, had I had a different life, would I have done that the same? Like what's going on? Um, if I could just move the conversation for a moment to something that, now I don't know if everybody feels this way, but for me, one of the effects of this forest, this experience that I had, and it was all of these accumulative, these experiences culminating. Is that the word? Are we saying culminating?
Or
Culminating? Accumulating. That pushed me into something that I never wanted to deal with. So I never wanted to deal with the emotional intimacy or physical intimacy issues that I have. But I would say that I have issues. And that has been, I don't know if it's by choice, but it was the last thing. It is the last piece to this puzzle. The ability to receive, whether it's someone coming to me when I had pneumonia, I could barely breathe, could barely talk. And I'm like, I don't need any help. Thanks. I'm good. I got this. I'll just go cook dinner. Right? Like, hello, this is a moment. And so then no one comes when you're sick because you've turned them away so many times that then you say, well, no one's seeing that I'm ill. And they're like, but you never want anything from us. And you move into this way of being. And I had to practice allowing people to come and help me. I've had to practice allowing myself to receive love. The shame of someone else's residue was so profound on me that it was like looking through a very murky glass. And I didn't know how to clean it when I knew the cleaning solution was self-love, receiving. How has that shown up for you? If it has shown up for any of you on the panel, I'd like to talk about that.
I mean, for me, I mean, that shows up all the time. It showed up yesterday when I was out with a friend for the first time. First time I met her in person, and she pays for our time out. That makes me very uncomfortable. Friends of mine paid for a very generous weekend away, and that was really difficult to say yes to. For me, it's about, and I don't know if you guys have the same experience, but for me, it's about receiving is very vulnerable, and I'm not comfortable in that place. That's been something I'm more focused on this year to work on. I'm going to say yes, even though it's really uncomfortable.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Go, Annie.
I think I also kind of mentioned something earlier, which is coming up again for me around like the self-sabotaging behavior, right? Of like this subconscious feeling of like, I don't deserve good things. And so I'm going to say no, or I'm going to say if something good happens to me, that there's another reason that it happened, right? Like that person, there's something there that is not just me being who I am. And I think it's something that I recently have been working on quite a lot. And it just makes me think of, how can we be more open to receiving without feeling badly about it, if that makes sense? And recently, a friend of mine, said to me, very lovely, but like it really struck me, was sometimes when you feel bad, it's actually taking away from other people's experience. And so if you want to like have everyone having a good experience, if you're actually able to hold that as your own, it actually can create more for other people. And I never thought of it that way. Yeah, but I think it's the rationalization too, right? Like I have to rationalize why someone would want to do something for me, or why my life would get better, or because I don't feel like just as me, that's enough.
Yeah. I mean, that's true for the giving also. If we don't allow
Yeah.
the giver to give, we're not allowing that person the opportunity to feel that way about the giving.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, because giving for me always had a secret code to it, and it usually resulted in fear, shame, rage, or silent treatment, which was worse than anything.
Right. Or you
Worse
would
than
you would
anything.
you would owe me if I give to you if you receive. Was there any of that?
Yeah. I spent a lot of time. The breaking point for my family was when he left. He estranged himself from our whole family. Like like all grandchildren, my mother, just like gone. And so before that happened, I found myself sitting on the stairs. I was talking to my brother, and I said, I sell myself to this family every day. So when harm comes to me, I sell myself. I'm a salesperson for my own right to be heard. I have to justify myself. And my brother stopped and he said, "What did you just say?" I said, "Yeah, I'm being misused. I'm being mishandled.
Yes.
And I'm trying to say something here. And I'm selling a piece of myself." And that was the moment it was this revelation for him. And he just went, "Oh my God." And it was a double revelation for me, because that's when I realized that that my worth was always for sale. And when the pain would strike, I would immediately try to sell myself to show that I was proven, I was good, like all those things. It's diabolical.
It is. It's survival.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
It's really interesting that you say that. I see that all the time, that I do that when I don't want to do something. I still justify all the time to people why I deserve to have, a few minutes to myself, or why I deserve not to do this. It's this really strange thing and then people just look at me and they're like, "Oh, it's fine. You already said you don't have time," or whatever, but
Yep.
there's this need to justify on why I should be doing this or not doing this, not just because it's a decision I made, but because there has to be some reason why that's valid for me. So I still do that now. When you just mentioned that, I was like, wow, I still do that now.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. That justifying is a big deal. And it moves me away from any gift of abundance that I could have, because I find that it takes me away from the seat of my soul. Like it takes me so far away that it's days to get myself back again to that space where I can say, okay, I'm going to redo this time. If it ever happens again, here's what I'm going to say, or here's what I'm going to do. And I always try to remind myself of that. And then this lack of being able to receive. And what I find then is my reaction, or Dave will notice this, where I just kind of go inward a little. If something happens that I have to justify myself, or I feel, like I gotta, sail, I kind of go inward a little bit. And he's learned now that it isn't him, but he can nurture me in that. And then it's finding the permission to remind myself that this man who's never hurt me a day in his life is safe for me.
Yeah.
And then I have to tell myself that he's safe. And he looks at me with these beautiful blue eyes and goes, I love you more than anything in this world. And yet I have to remind myself that this is part of this experience for those of us who've been in these spaces where we've disconnected and we've lost this who we were when Tammy said, I was born beautiful, perfect, and loving. That's where it's gone for us.
And isn't that the process of life and therapy? That there's no pathology in that. That it's the act of leaving and returning back to love, and coming back to love. And hopefully we do it with grace and compassion and love, not always. But that practice is, I believe, what life is about. It's what we do in therapy to be gentle with ourselves, to keep remembering and keep returning. And I think that is the human experience and human condition, that we won't always stay in that place. We can't. It's impossible. And it's not a pathology that we keep losing our footing or walking away from it. But the lesson is to keep returning.
I just was going to say, and for me, what I've been trying to find is how can I find it again quicker? How can I get back on center a little bit faster than maybe I did a month ago, right? Never mind a year ago.
Can we answer that question?
Yeah.
Anyone?
I wonder the same thing. That's what I spent my life work on. It's like, how can we make this just a little bit quicker and maybe a little bit smoother without going under every time? Because that was sort of the challenge, is that it would pull me under so much that I literally couldn't go to work for a week or 2 weeks, and I would just be stuck in this dark space. And so the same wondering, and now I come to it with, I almost want to say, curiosity, and asking that same question and saying, well, how can I stay afloat when this happens, or when I have these feelings of I should really be running and protecting myself, but there's not really any reason to. I just feel this way. How can I come back to love? How can I be more open to it again without taking a month where it needs me to recover, or without, just shutting myself in and not answering anyone on message? That happens sometimes. How can I do this quicker? And I'm not sure if I found the whole answer to this yet, but a part of it definitely is allowing myself to be vulnerable in this place. And that's what I was so afraid of for such a long time, because as both Lori and Annie, you've said, we were just expecting for that next pain to come. We're just expecting for that next bad thing to come, for this next terrible thing to happen. And in that vulnerability, I've really learned to trust myself again. And that was something that wasn't there before. I feel now that I've been working on that piece, it doesn't take me as long to recover when things do happen because I have a different base with myself now. I think physically too, that's also where the piece of the nervous system healing comes in, but also mentally and emotionally is continually building that trust with myself that I didn't fail myself. I didn't abandon myself. I did the best I could. I was there for myself all the time. All the pieces of me were there. And to go from that. So I don't know if that's a little piece of how we can do that, but yeah, that's kind of what I'm still working on that and it's definitely going to be a journey, but that's been a big part of that.
I agree with you. I keep hearing the word connection, and it's only in that vulnerable place that we can connect. And I don't mean necessarily with others, although that's true as well, but it's back to self. And again, keep coming back to that connection to self, to source, to others, to nature, to all of it. And I think in order to do that, like you so beautifully said, Petra, we have to be a little vulnerable.
And I would argue that we're doing it right now, right? Like this actually feels,
Yes.
for me, like a piece of that, right? Like being in space with people who have similar feelings and thoughts and experiences, and being open to different points of view. And also, I think for me, not pushing myself back on the track too quickly, right? Like allowing myself to get off track and then not being like, you have to be on track right now, but allowing myself to find my way back. It happens more naturally is what I found.
Well, and to add to that, Petra, you said it so well at the very beginning. You said, I had to listen a few times to the reading and giving yourself the space to say, okay, I'm not going to drop this, but I'm going to create trust with myself that this can be metered out in a way that I will treat my body and my soul and my journey with respect. And so, where you noticed where she reaches out to touch this image in the water, that's where you hit pause. That is allowing the body to breathe. It's allowing what once was stagnant to have a drop of water that can change the flow. It is the light in the crack of our wounding, right? It's this healing, and it's being vulnerable is in the pausing. It's respecting, I need a second. And then breathing and stepping away and taking the day, taking the evening, coming back and going, okay, now I'm going to hear it with a new space here. I'm going to listen more. And if there's anyone out there who's listened and turned it off, no problems. Because sometimes you need to know the only way to know you're not alone is through the power of story, to hear other people share. Then you can go back and read or listen. And that's where we can begin to gain trust with our bodies. It's what I had to do. I had to preserve that part of me that craves stability and safety.
Yes.
And that's part of versus the protection. But let's be curious and let's hold it carefully. I just find that important.
Yeah. Go gently.
Go gently. Is there anything that, Annie, that you want to say as we begin to wrap this up? Is there anything you want to share or encourage our listeners and viewers with what you've said today so far?
That's a big question, Lori.
That's what I'm here for.
I think when I think about my experience of life, which I think I refer to a lot, and that's kind of how I've also reframed saying like my trauma experience is like it's my experience of life. And is to not only be curious about my own stuff, but to also be curious about like the things that I'm carrying from others. And then also the positive things that I'm carrying from others, because I think there can be the negative parts and the positive parts, and where does our part like kind of come through? Um and just yeah, I think curiosity is a big one, and just kind of being tender with ourselves and with other people. And I know in our last talk we talked a lot about forgiveness and about kind of people who do harm often have been harmed, and I think kind of having space for that has been really important for me in my own healing.
Very good.
Again, the whole not an excuse, but an explanation.
Yeah, yes. Yes. I like that. Very good. Petra, do you have anything?
I just want to go back to the forest just for one moment, if
Ooh.
that's okay.
Yes, please.
Because when I read what you had sent and listened to what you had sent over, the one thing that made me really curious was the fact that when I thought about my forest, it actually looked really neat and tidy. Like out of one of those magazines, where everything is perfectly manicured, one of
Mm.
those evil, dark forests, every tree perfect, every grass perfect, the moss perfectly on the ground, the gravel, not one piece on the side of it, all perfectly lined up. And I was wondering why I thought that. So I feel as we are wrapping this up and I've listened to what each one of you has shared today, that our journeys, even though we may feel like what we have experienced is the same in some way, we've had a trauma, we've had abuse, whatever we label that, our journey is so unique and individual. And giving myself permission to have that unique journey, to look at things in whatever way they come up for me, that was one of the biggest things that I think that challenged me in the last few years, because it was always like, oh, you should go to therapy. You should maybe take medication. Oh, but the grief journey looks like this. After 1 year, you just need to be done with this. Oh, well, yeah, you're going to have intimacy issues or this or that. That's normal for what you went through. Hmm. My journey looked different at different points. It didn't look like maybe someone else's journey, just like my forest looks different, because I feel through all of this, I have some control issues because that was the thing that made me feel safe. So honoring that journey, and whoever we work with, whoever we encounter, our friends, our family, they're all on this individual journey as well. And through that connection, as we have today, we can share these individual journeys and we can come together on the pieces that unite us, and where we kind of cross over and say, yeah, we've all experienced that. And also have our individual pieces where it's maybe different from other people and just as valid, which was sort of the biggest thing for me. It's like, yes, it's valid that it's different for you. Yes, it's valid that your forest is neat and there's not a tree out of place. It was valid. And so thank you for, again, keeping this space for each of us to share these individual pieces. And I do feel like we were really vulnerable in this conversation, and that also, I feel, brought a lot of healing for me today. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Petra.
Yeah, thank you, Petra. Your forest is so important, and I love that you're saying everyone's forest is different and it belongs to them. And because inside that forest is what keeps us safe. It kept us safe, as the writing says. You lived in that forest. You learned to walk around with your eyes closed because it was so dark, and you bumped into all kinds of things, but then you learned how to navigate. And that's really the essence of what you're saying. You learned how to navigate by putting things in the right order. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
And I would say too that the forest can change, right? Like you can plant a new tree in your forest, and you can, seeds can sow, and yeah, beautiful.
Beautiful. Miss Tammy?
Yes, ma'am. Something just about my forest to say what you said, to add to what you were saying, Annie. My forest has changed, and it is beautiful, and there's water features, and of course there's water, and but there are back parts. It's way in the back that are still dark, and places I don't even know that exist. You know, the things I don't know yet. So I have seen mine evolve. But I think for our listeners, to answer your question, Lori, wherever people are in this journey, and exploring who they were before the world told them who they needed to be, whether it's realizing you have a forest, whether it's trying to figure your way out of the forest, or anything else, my hope is from that, our conversations today and our connections and our vulnerability, that others find a spark of light coming into their forest, and that they use whatever resources, tools, thoughts, maybe something has sparked something in this conversation, to navigate that. And I do want to emphasize, because it was so important for all of us, and I emphasize this in my TED Talk as well, that talk therapy has its place, and find a way to get into your body. That is paramount.
Yeah.
Thank
I
you
agree
for
with that.
having me, Lori.
Oh,
And Annie and Petra for joining us. This has been incredible.
Thank you.
Thank you.
and for me, this is probably the most healing thing that's ever happened to me in my life. And so there was so much vulnerability, and there was so much unbelief that I could create, that I had something to offer. And so for those who are listening, and for all of us today, we have everything we need inside of us. And sometimes it's these conversations that create a space that says, oh my goodness, it's like what you said, Petra, I'm not alone. I'm not alone. I'm not alone. And I wrote this and I put it on the shelf for a year. I did not look. I didn't even know what I'd written, because I was so worried about what I was getting from my body was going to be taken away from me, that the light and the thing that made me feel so alive as I was writing was going to be ripped away from me. Because my life, I've lost everything. I lost my agency, my dignity. I lost my whole family. And this is the most beautiful expression of receiving. And I feel like there's a new version of myself. And she has stepped forward, and she can carry all the babies. I can carry everybody, and I can nurture my little ones, because I now feel this shift from, could I, to, oh yes, oh freaking yes. And watch me.
Yes.
Watch us.
Yes.
Watch us do this. And this is where the life, and our life and your life and whoever's watching, can change. In this moment, believing that your story matters, that your narrative it can be released, the anxiety, the depression, the suppression. And it's not only you. What you might be feeling might be from your great-grandmother. It might be the words that were spoken to her that then were spoken to others, and they just translated down. And it might be this tension within your body that says, I don't know why this isn't sitting well for me. Yeah, because it's not yours. It's not even theirs, but they don't have another way to tell us that we all need it. Your family lineage needs this breath of fresh air. And so we can come back to ourselves. We can find our way back. And it is a journey. None of us on this panel or the previous guests on the panel would ever say, oh, I've arrived. This is the life work and the work of softness, the work of curiosity, the work of we are so much more than the worst thing that has happened to us. We are so much more. And so with that, I am just honored, and it's a privilege to share this conversation with all of you. This is a highlight for me. And I just want to say thank you. Thank you for showing up.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, that's a wrap.
Great. Oh.
Yeah.
Snaps. We can snap now.
Snap it away, people. Snap or snap. Thank you for joining us for this 6-part Shame Out Loud series. I want to say thank you to Petra for coming on to our roundtable conversation today and sharing and listening and being a part of this incredible conversation. And to every guest who sat at the round table with Tammy and myself, to Annie, Laura, Karina, to Tammy, to Petra, again, thank you. Thank you for your honesty, your steadiness, and your willingness to speak what so many people carry so quietly. Your voices shaped this series, and in ways that, will stay with us for so long. I just appreciate every one of your stories and every encouragement. I just enjoyed this so much. If you want to learn more about any of the guests you heard across these conversations, you can visit LoriClarkeMedia.com and go to Shame Out Loud series page. Everything you need is there. And if something in these episodes stirred in you, the Curious Writing Companions are available for whenever you're ready. They are designed to help you keep exploring in a way that feels grounded, gentle, and entirely your own. And before I close, I want to just leave you with this. Nothing that you uncovered while listening makes you less whole. The fact that you stayed with these conversations is really in itself its own kind of courage. You're already moving toward a life that belongs to you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening, for staying open, and for walking this path with us. I'm Lori Clarke. This is Shame Out Loud, and I'll meet you in whatever comes next.